Hello, everyone, and I'm so sorry about that technical hitch. I'm sitting in my home office in London with a stinking cold that you can probably hear, and it is such a joy to be with you all and to be part of this extraordinary event. I was so moved hearing Annam speak and the other speakers, and it's a real privilege to be here. Anyway, we haven't got long together, so we are here to talk about that voice in our heads and what I call the inner critic. And I'm assuming that everyone knows what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the little voice that kind of gives you a running critique on what you're doing. Oh, that was stupid. Why did you do that? Couldn't you have thought something better? Or you're not good enough to do this. Who do you think you are? Anyway, all of us have, to a greater or lesser extent, this critical voice inside our heads. And I'm going to just open a little poll because I want to know where you are all with that. So I'm going to ask you. Now I've got to find my draft poll. Here we go. So it's not going off. Can I make it live publish? Yeah, here we go. So the poll has started, I hope. And what it asks is, how self-critical are you? How noisy is the negative voice in your head? Is it very noisy? Is it there sometimes? Or are you so serene that you don't even have a negative voice in your head? Can someone tell me in the chat whether or not you can see the poll? Let me see. Oh, yeah, I'm getting some votes in. Okay. So do, if you haven't yet, vote, because I want to feel like I'm not the only person in the room who has this negative critical voice. And that voice is there for a reason. It is there because it is trying to help us. The problem is that most of the time it's incredibly negative. And oh yeah, we're getting some good results here. 66.7% have a very noisy critical voice in their heads. So I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who has it. So this voice in our head often sounds like it's being friendly, sounds like it's being helpful, but actually what it does is it undermines our ability to flourish and our ability to function. And the reason why that voice exists is quite helpful to understand why it's there. Is it's largely there to keep us safe. That voice, we are programmed because of our evolutionary biology to be very threat focused. And when we lived in early times as humans, we had to be the lookout. They were on the lookout the whole time. There were threats everywhere, and that response remains inside us, even though we're no longer likely to be leapt on, certainly in the city that I'm lucky enough to live in, by a tiger or stampeded by a herd of elephants. Our threat focus is still there, scanning constantly for danger. So what this means is that we have a negativity bias. Our head is focused on looking out for things that could be dangerous. So this inner voice has got the habit of saying, oh, that looks very dangerous over there. Oh, you don't want to say that. Don't take any risks. Keep your head down. Don't open your mouth. So this critical voice is trying to keep us safe, but it's trying to keep us safe by making us frightened and by making us scared of anything that may involve us expressing who we are or standing out or taking a risk. And let's face it, living involves a lot of risks. So that inner voice is there for an evolutionary reason, but it has outlived its purpose. There's another dimension to the inner voice, which is that sometimes the inner voice isn't even just our evolutionary, be careful, don't get isolated from the pack voice. Sometimes our inner voice is the voice of a critical caregiver or the voice of a critical parent. So, I grew up with quite a critical father, and so I was almost mute as a kid. I didn't open my mouth if the teacher asked me a question in class. I know it's hard to believe with me talking so quickly now, but if I was asked a question in class, I wouldn't even be able to answer the question because I was so scared of even just having my voice heard. And that was because my father had inculcated in me this belief that I was stupid, that anything I said wasn't worth saying, that my voice wasn't right. And we have inside us this evolutionary critical voice that's trying to keep us safe from dangers that don't really exist. And then we have the negative voices from teachers, caregivers, and from society. For women, there are plenty of edicts that we absorb from society about what it is and isn't okay to say or do. Um, and so that will be internalized as well. So we have a whole kind of orchestra of negative voices in our head, and they can kick off at any moment. So why does that matter? It matters because all of us are here because we want to see a more compassionate world. I'm just turning on the chat, almost like survival mode. Yes. Now, I'm really sorry because I had this fantastic presentation, which I will make sure you get afterwards, but I am completely technologically or too full of cold to work out how to share it. So you're just going to have me talking, and then we will have a breakout room or two, I hope, because I've worked out how to do that. But why does it matter that we live with this? Because most of us are here because we care deeply about the well-being of others, about the well-being of our planet, about the suffering that is happening across the globe, much of it caused by human actions or human inaction. So why should we bother about ourselves at a time like this? Shouldn't we just be extending ourselves to others? Well, I'll tell you what Audre Lorde, the American Black civil rights activist, had to say on this. She said, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." So what we're doing today may sound soft, may sound introspective, but actually it is an act of political warfare, because the more we take care of our inner selves, the clearer the channel we will have to be of use and of service in the outside world. If we want compassion to flow through us, we have to be clear. And this negativity is one of the things that blocks us. And if we're in a scared, self-critical state, we are not going to be effective as channels for compassion. I just want to talk a bit about the power of your mind. And I'm so cross. Actually, what I'm going to do, because there's a lot of me talking, I'm going to just do a little exercise with you, and I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and I would like you to just have a chat with the people there about the sort of negative things that your head tells you, and see if you can identify what their underlying purpose might be, and also how true they're likely to be. And I hope you're going to conclude that most of what they say is not true, but let's see. So I'm going to put you in your breakout rooms, which I'm going to do, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes just to have that conversation. And while you're there, I'm going to try and work out how to I'm going to put you in groups of 4, maximum of half. Okay, so let's do this. So I'm going to put you in 2 groups. There we go. And see what happens. So compare some notes about the voices in your head. And while you're doing that, I'm going to try and get the slides up. You are back. Hooray. I'm so sorry I can't see you, but I'm glad you're there. How was that for everyone? Did anyone find that they had similar voices in their heads or similar criticisms? I think you can post in Q&A, or you can put something in the chat. Give me some feedback in the chat as to whether you kind of recognize what I'm saying, that the kind of the duplicitous nature of the messages that our inner critic gives us. Okay, so I am going to keep going. We talked about colleagues contributing to this self-talk. Yes, yes, anyone who works in an office, anyone who works with colleagues knows that can be like. And so it isn't just our own inner critic, it's the real criticism that exists outside. And the work that we're going to do here now, schools are very political. Yep, that's for sure. The work we're going to do now in this short time we have together is to try and build a level of insulation around ourselves. I'm just going to ask you a quick thought experiment. I want you to imagine that you are sucking on a lemon, and just let your body react to that. Just close your eyes and imagine you're tasting a lemon. And notice how your body responds to that taste. It's bitter. You may feel a kind of slight shock, a slight jolt. And then I want you to contrast that with biting into something that you really love, maybe a ripe peach or a chocolate cupcake. Just close your eyes and imagine eating something really, really delicious. And just be aware that although you haven't sucked on the lemon or eaten the delicious fruit or the cupcake, you can create in your mind a physical reaction to what you're thinking about. And negative thoughts are so important because they actually affect how our whole immune system functions. There's been research done on cancer patients. Most of us know about the placebo effect, where a patient takes a pill, and although it's only a sugar pill, they think it's a real pill, so they start feeling better. Well, they've also done experiments which are the opposite, where they told a group of patients that they were giving them chemotherapy, and but they weren't, and a significant number of them started to lose their hair and to vomit. So just the very belief that we are having a toxic chemical put into us is enough to induce a physical response. So that is why our negative thoughts are so incredibly dangerous to us, and why we need to be incredibly careful about them. So what do we do about them? Well, the answer, you won't be surprised for me to hear, is self-compassion. But self-compassion, just saying be self-compassionate, that doesn't work for me. It's just be nice to yourself, just be kind to yourself. It's almost as bad as just pull yourself together. It just doesn't work. So I'll just read to you what Kristen Neff, who's one of the foremost writers on self-compassion, says about self-compassion. She says self-compassion entails being warm and understanding towards ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, rather than ignoring our pain or flagellating ourselves with self-criticism. So self-compassion is kind of the opposite. It's being nice to ourselves, whereas as a routine matter, we have these negative voices. So that's a nice idea. But how do we do it? I'd like to invite you for a moment to just come on a little journey with me, and to close your eyes. And I'm just going to give you a little 2-minute meditation. And I just want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine. And if you are used to stilling your breath and you're used to meditating, just take a few deep breaths in, counting to 4. And then out, counting to 5. In, out. Now, I want you to imagine that you have someone really lovely coming to visit you. They're going to stay the night, and I want you to think about how you would prepare their room for them or their sleeping space for them. How would you make the space feel welcoming? How would you make it feel comfortable? How would you let them know how much they're loved and how welcome they are? And if you can, just try and visualize, maybe it's in wherever you live, maybe it's somewhere that you imagine. Just imagine getting a space or a room or a bed and just making it as inviting as possible for this guest that is coming to stay. Maybe you pick some wild flowers. Maybe you light a candle. Maybe you put a cuddly toy on their bed. Just make it really inviting. And then I want you to imagine that the guest is at the door and about to enter the space you've created. And I want you to imagine that you are that guest walking into that space, and try and imagine what that feels like. Try and really feel the warmth, the welcome, the knowledge that you're loved, the knowledge that you're safe, the knowledge that you belong, the knowledge that you're taken care of, the knowledge that you're loved and accepted just the way you are. And just take a moment to enjoy being in that physical space and also being in that psychological and emotional space. It's kind of like an embrace from someone you know loves you. And then when you're ready, try and hold on to that feeling and come back into the space here and hold that feeling with you. So I don't know how many of you were able to enter that space, but I certainly feel a whole different sense of peace inside myself. And that's what we're looking for, because really we've been living in a state of internal war. And this shift from self-criticism and self-doubt to self-compassion and self-acceptance is like the journey into peace. It's like the journey into being loved. It's like the journey into feeling safe. And it starts with how we talk to ourselves. So nature really, really hates having a vacuum. So it's no good saying to yourself, don't think self-critical thoughts. The way that we shift bad habits, and that's what self-criticism is. It's a evolutionarily inspired and then encouraged and cultivated by our society bad habit. So the way to change a habit is to replace it with a healthy action. So if a habit is bad, we replace it with its opposite, with a good act. It's rather like going to the gym when if we have, or going to exercise, if our back is hurting, we know that we need to exercise the opposite muscle group, our stomach. So we work the muscle group that is the opposite to the one that we want to correct. So the opposite muscle group is it's self-appreciation. And the psychological term is positive self-talk. If you could see the presentation right now, you would see a big teddy bear that you could hug. And when I started doing this work, I didn't like myself. I hated myself. I had self-harmed, and I had come to this work from a place of deep pain and despair. And I couldn't think of anything nice to say to myself. I really believed that I hated myself. You know, my defense mechanism of protecting myself from disappointment and trying to keep myself safe was so ingrained that I couldn't even step out of it enough to start to begin to unpick it. So I got a teddy bear and I practiced being nice to that cuddly stuffed animal. And I started talking to that cuddly stuffed animal in a loving way. And I developed a relationship with it because it couldn't hurt me. And it was sweet and cute and cuddly. And it was safe. It was safe. So I started this practice not on myself. As an adult, I started this practice with a cuddly toy. So, you know, I was at the really extreme end of the self-hatred spectrum when I came in. So you may not be there, but if you find this uncomfortable, know that I did too, and that you can start not on yourself, but on, you know, an inanimate safe object that you can really love. And those of us who have children or have someone we love, we know what that feeling is. We just don't know how to feel it for ourselves. And so the way we start is by having an antidote to some of those negative messages that we had. And if we had long enough, what I would do is get you all to post in the chat some of the negative messages. But instead, I'm going to put in the chat some of the positive messages which you can try out. It's like trying to find the perfect anti-venom. So I'm going to give you 4 really nice, kind statements to practice saying to yourself. And one of them or 2 of them will resonate more than the others. So I'm going to put them in the chat, and then I'm going to ask you to practice saying them to yourselves. Okay, you're going to feel icky when you see them. I am loved and I am loving. I am loved and I am loving. Just as I'm writing it out, just sit there and see how that feels. Say it to yourself as I say it to you. I am loved and I'm loving. I'm loved and I'm loving. I am loved and I'm loving. Yeah. So here's another. This is for people like me who are workaholics, and many of us are doaholics. I am enough. I do enough. I am enough. I do enough. So when that self-criticism in a work environment or a life environment comes up, try that. I am enough. I do enough. I'm enough. I'm enough and I do enough. I don't need to be anything more and I don't need to do anything more. Thank you, Rako. I am enough. I do enough. I am enough. I do enough. And this one can be a bit more challenging if you're new to this, but I use this a lot. I love you just the way you are. I love you just the way you are. I love you just the way you are. Just try and say that to yourself. Try and say that to yourself, to this person that you criticized and found wanting or not enough. I love you just the way you are. Beautiful. Well done. And then if you can't say it in the I statement, here is a you version of that. You are enough. And I love you very much. You are enough. And I love you very much. You are enough. And I love you very much. You are enough. And I love you very much. So just going to put you in breakout rooms and to just talk about what came up for you when you heard these and whether any of them spoke to you, and you're welcome to adapt them. What these become are almost like mantras to replace the negative statements that we say to ourselves. There's a fantastic writer who wrote a lot of self-help books in the 1980s called Susan Jeffers. She wrote a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And And what she says is that these are these are the the messages that we use to protect ourselves. These are like our spiritual shield. And to an extent, it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. You just say it to yourself. And you have roughly 3 seconds when a negative thought enters your head to try and dislodge it. Because if you don't dislodge it within those first 3 seconds, it will take hold, and then it will go down its well-worn roots, and you'll end up thinking that you're not very likable, or you're not very competent, or you're just not what you should be or ought to be. How often do we should ourselves? We should be this, we should do that. So we have about 3 seconds when we hear that negative voice coming in to replace it. You can't unthink a negative thought, but you can replace it. And what these 4 statements that I've given you, which you can use 1, 2, or all of them, what they do is they become the way that you push the negative thought out, and you use it. And I will use it. I when I feel a negative feeling coming up, when someone's ignored me or something has triggered that emotional reaction, which normally comes from a very young place in myself, I will say, I'm loved and I'm loving, or I love you just the way you are, I love you just the way you are. And I'll walk down the street. I won't say it out loud. People think I'm crazy enough as it is, but I will say it inside my head. I love you just the way you are. And I just say it until that moment, that storm of negativity is past, and I'm returned to center and returned to equilibrium. So I'm sorry that I'm doing all the talking, and because I don't know how to make this interactive, but I'm just going to give you another 5 minutes before, and then we'll come back and I'll give you a couple more thoughts to take away with you, just to talk that through with other people. And I'm going to set the timer. So I'm going to set the timer. I'm going to set the timer. So make sure that everyone has a chance to speak. So I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes. And yeah, enjoy. Try these out. Maybe try saying them to each other if you can't say them to yourself. Just see how it goes. Oh, good. You're back. I'm so sorry about my technological challenges. Thank you. You're back. Hooray. You're all back. Tell me, how did you give me feedback? How did you get on with those phrases? Were they did they make you feel really icky? Were they useful? Could you see how they might comfort? Anyway, what I would invite you to do, that's nice, someone's given me some confetti. What I would invite you to do is to just try it. You know, if you try something for 30 days and it doesn't work, something like this, you've lost nothing. But thank you, Merida. Nice to see you, Merida. You've got nothing to lose. So try it for 30 days. Every time that negative thought comes into your head, recognize that it's negative, recognize that it's self-critical, recognize that it is not helpful. You know, the way that we are at our finest, at our most compassionate, our most expansive, is when that we are aligned, and any form of self-criticism will take us out of alignment. That's lovely. Thank you. Yeah, that thank you for that comment. They were impactful, especially after the meditation. So what we're really doing is we're soothing that scared, frightened part of ourselves. We're bringing ourselves back into center. We're bringing ourselves back into center so that we can be of service and be everything that we're meant to be on this journey. And we've only got a few minutes left, but I just want to mention one other 3-letter word that is often forgotten by us activists, though I'm sure not by some of you. And that 3-letter word is joy. You know, we can be so busy trying to alleviate suffering that we forget about joy. And so for me, joy, I wrote a book called We, which was about how we make the journey, the psychological journey, from me-based thinking to we, collective-based thinking. And joy is one of the most important things. Joy is the oxygen. that we use to light the pilot light. Inside each of us, there is a little pilot light, whether you think of it as your soul or your being. And the more we feed it with positive things, the brighter our inner light burns. And the more we feed it with negative things, with fear, with depression, with closing in, the smaller that pilot light gets. And joy is really a mustard seed that can lift those heavy paving stones. So I invite you, after you go away from this extraordinary gathering, to do one thing that brings you joy, and to know that as you do it, you're not being self-indulgent, you're not being selfish, you're feeding your capacity to be fully alive. And then I just have one more final thought for you. So take away the knowledge that negativity doesn't just not help us, it actually causes us to be out of alignment. Take away with you how the kindness we give others, we need to show to ourselves so that we can return to center and use those mantras, use those phrases, use them whether you believe in them or not, use them, repeat them, repeat them, repeat them, repeat them, and sooner or later they will become true and you will have that sense of peace. And then finally, just remember that we can't do everything. And there's a beautiful quote from the Emily Dickinson, the poet, which I will leave you with. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I will not have lived in vain. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I will not have lived in vain. So all of us, we've all touched one heart, and that means that our life has purpose and meaning. And it's wonderful that we're here. Thank you all so much for your time. And I wish I could see your faces, but I feel your spirits and your souls, and blessings. And I hope to meet you again on this journey. Thank you.